Today, ActionSA will deliver its National Manifesto campaign manifesto for the 2024 general elections. The party is going to be contesting the May 29 national and provincial elections for the first time since it was formed in 2020. The event meant to inspire hope for all South Africans who've been let down by a failed political establishment. The launch will be held at the Ellis Park Indoor Arena, which has a seating capacity of 5,000. Joining us now is ahead of this event is Beaumont, who's the ActionSA National Chairperson. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. Your manifesto will be grounded in 5 priorities. Perhaps talk to us about your plan.
I think before we go any further, I think we really welcome the fact that ActionSA will launch our manifesto after so many other parties have, because we've had the opportunity to see how political parties have failed to read the national mood in South Africa. South Africans are gutful with broken promises, and yet one party after another has come forward making spectacular claims that seem to have no credibility. ActionSA's plans will not just be presented today in terms of what we will do, but how we will do it, because we need South Africans to believe that there is an ability to fix our country. In terms of our priorities, we talk about the 5+1 concept. Our focus is on economic growth that is going to create jobs through programs in the private and public sector. We talk about economic redress, and particularly our policy of inclusive economic empowerment and the goals of generating economic opportunity at the grassroots level where BEE never has. We talk about the need to generate a rule of law in South Africa that has been fundamentally absent for many years. And particularly, we're going to take a focus on 2 subjects that we think are underwhelming in national government, that being substance abuse and gender-based violence. We will lay out our plans to end load shedding and a time frame behind which it will be ended. And I think particularly important from our side is the need to ensure that there is a set of plans. When we talk about the +1, we talk about the programs of government and the changes we're going to make to government itself to see that these plans are effectively delivered to the South African people.
You talk about your emphasis on how you will do it. I mean, you highlight economic growth, of course, a big matter insofar as the ripple effect on jobs and the level of unemployment in the country, especially amongst the youth, who are a big chunk of the people who will be making their mark come May 29. There are already programs in place. How will yours differ?
Well, I think firstly we must talk about the effectiveness of those programs for one. But I think from a policy point of view, because we're not here to talk about how we will do things differently or better just from the ANC, we're going to talk about what offerings we put on the table that are unique about ActionSA. And from our standpoint, one of the biggest things we're going to be saying to young people today is that the greatest tragedy of our democracy is the failure to build universities, colleges and training academies so that more young people have an option when they leave high school. If you look at the ratio of matric leavers in 1994 and the amount of seats available at those institutions then versus that ratio now, the reality is 80% of young people do not have a pathway after school. So we need to see building zones across cities and across provinces in South Africa, building new universities and colleges. But also we put forward the idea of a year of service, where the South African government can provide young people the opportunity to work in various places, including in the military, so that they can get the necessary experience and make themselves more competitive in a global economy.
We know that your leader, Herman Mashaba, has on many occasions come under scrutiny for his stance on illegal foreigners. I do understand that it is part of your plans to, talk more and expand more on this topical issue. We also know that Mashaba has said that extremists within ActionSA have now lost their bird to get the party to take a hard line on immigration. What is the stance this time around?
Well, actually, I would suggest to you the extremists are outside of ActionSA. The extremists are the people in South Africa who are saying that if you talk about the borders, you are xenophobic. And on the other side, the extremists are those people who go around operating like quasi-law enforcement units, raiding businesses. I think ActionSA is the rational middle ground on this topic, and there's no debate within ActionSA. We all very strongly hold that point of view. But we need a rule of law. And one of the first principles behind a rule of law is that a country must have a border, and a country must determine how people and goods enter and leave And every successful country in the world operates that way. South Africa can be no different. And the reality is, when you consider the economic crises that have been created on our border by countries like Zimbabwe, when you consider a criminal justice system that is failing, and when you consider a social infrastructure in South Africa that is battling to deal with the load, illegal immigration has become a crisis, and there needs to be stronger leadership on this topic, and not the kind of leadership that says what is comfortable to be heard, but says what needs to be done in order to ensure that South Africa can be a country that can have a rule of law.
Yeah. And as you launch this manifesto, we understand that it's 5,000 seats that you're filling. We've seen how other parties have gone to stadiums as a show of force. What's your approach there?
Well, I think we must be clear. ActionSA is a political party that has not yet had the opportunity to be represented in Parliament. Those parties that you see filling stadia at the moment are represented in Parliament and have very generously rewarded themselves with 1.5 billion rand of taxpayer funding, notwithstanding the question about illicit party funding, which appears to be an ongoing problem that's not being tackled by the IEC. ActionSA has to raise every cent we spend privately. And at the end of the day, we could have filled a much bigger venue than this if you look at our support levels. But this is the venue we could afford to fill at this point in time. But we're a smart organization. We were born in a COVID-19 lockdown, and we broadcast that launch live in a studio environment, just like we will be today, to South Africans across the 9 provinces. And we will be doing everything we can to ensure that no person is excluded from this important conversation.
Yeah. You're not represented in Parliament, but you do have a view. What are your views around National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula? We know that a lot of momentum is building up on the reaction on her case and the stance that the DA is taking on the vote of no confidence. What are your thoughts around this?
A vote of no confidence is absolutely essential. If ActionSA was in Parliament, it wouldn't have taken this long, because the National Assembly Speaker is a person who needs to be beyond reproach. This is a person who heads the legislative arm, the person who's supposed to hold the executive to account. And here our Speaker is accused of abusing her former position in the executive for financial gain. Such a person cannot lead Parliament, and we need to ensure that there is accountability and there's leadership that is beyond reproach. The Speaker clearly doesn't meet that standard, and had ActionSA been in Parliament, this motion would have been filed sooner.
Very well. Very well. Let's leave it there for now. Of course, Michael Beaumont, ActionSA National Chairperson, giving us an overview of what is to be covered, what can be expected as ActionSA launches its manifesto today in Johannesburg, filling 5,000 seats, and of course, ironing out and detailing their 5 priority areas.